name's Matt Willinger. I'm Executive Director of Operations for Louisville Alumni, and we appreciate you joining us this afternoon on your lunch break for our ongoing series of chats through Louisville Alumni's virtual engagement platform. And we're honored to be joined today by Dean of Students, Dr. Michael Mardis. He's going to give us an update on the Student Emergency Fund and then talk a little broader about some other important updates and topics. As you can see, he is joining us live from his office in the Student Activity Center, so he can give us a little feel about what it's like on campus right now. If you're not familiar, as Dean of Students and Chief Student Affairs Officer for the University of Louisville, Dr. Mardis oversees a number of important elements, including housing, the counseling center, intramural and recreational sports, career development center, Student Government Association, fraternities and sororities, clubs and organizations, the Student Programming Board. Dr. Mardis is a three-time graduate of the University of Louisville and has over 24 years of professional experience working in student affairs and higher education. Dr. Mardis, thanks for joining us this afternoon and taking some time to speak about the university updates and the Student Emergency Fund and the immediate impact it's having across campus. We want to start today by letting you just provide a general overview of what's been happening over these last couple of weeks, and then from there we'll get into some questions that have been submitted by the participants joining us today.
Okay. Well, I think it's been the most challenging experience I've ever had in higher ed, and obviously for all of us that are going through this pandemic, having never experienced it in our lifetime. So we have been having to reframe and redesign everything that we do going to a virtual world. Tim, I don't know if you can pull up that PowerPoint slide to be able to share with everybody, and go ahead and go to that next one. Our students are, for UofL, this is their home. And we make a big deal about this. This mural that you're seeing is in the Student Activity Center. So for every student, when they come here, we want them to feel like this is a sense of belonging that they have being here and that this is their home. And that has been a focus point for us at UofL. Some universities just closed down and said everybody's got to go out and move away. And we were committed to not doing that. Dr. Bendaputi, our board of trustees, have really supported us in helping our students. And we heard very clearly from our student leadership too, and talking with SGA, really two main priorities going through this crisis, focusing on our students. One is that this notion that UofL is their home, and we want students to be able to be taken care of. And two is we know that many times in these trying, difficult situations and financial crisis, our most vulnerable students are the ones who can oftentimes have the most need. And we have seen that play out. And many of our students, they don't have another place to go. So we've made sure that every student who needed a place to stay has a place to stay. And so that's been important. We've seen the changes for our students. So many of them have lost their jobs. So many of them worked in the service sector and the retail sector, so they've lost their jobs, their internships. They're caring for family members. We've seen all kinds of reports come in on the student emergency funds, caring for elder parents, people that have immune deficiencies who are needing to have extra care, their children. Obviously, a number of our students that are going to school also have children, so now they're having to care for their children at home. They're dealing with the social isolation. Most of us are aware of the increased mental health concerns within our society and within this age group in higher education, and the university's put a lot of resources into helping our students. But going into this, time period of having more distance, it's challenging. A lot of our students didn't have the resources to move to a remote environment, so Wi-Fi and online learning was challenging for them as well. And Tim, you can just keep rolling through these. Obviously, academics is the core of our mission. The provost, Dr. Beth Boehm, who's also an English faculty member, has done an excellent job of leading with the deans and faculty senate to be able to make these quick adjustments. We moved to online rapidly, and fortunately had the resources and the ability to do that. And we have a great, robust online program, and that is delivered one way. And what we're having to deliver now is more remote learning, because everything's not planned and prepared like the intentional planning we have for all of our online courses. But there was training for all the faculty, and they learned how to be able to take these courses online. We've also moved all of our summer classes online, just making sure that students would know that. We didn't have to disrupt not knowing when we could come back. So we went ahead and moved all our summer classes online, as well as our orientation has moved online. But academic advising is available, tutoring is available, so students can still receive all the same academic services. The library has remained open, so students who need to go and have access to technology, they're able to do that. We have worked with the different charter to be able to provide free internet. We have kept the Student Activity Center open and other locations open on campus for students to come here. We've troubleshooted problems as they've moved to rural parts of their community or in Kentucky or other areas that didn't have good internet access. We've worked with them to be able to help them have those resources. As it relates to the emergency fund, we had students that didn't have the technology. They couldn't afford a hotspot. They couldn't afford a laptop. So we've had some students who we've used those funds to purchase laptops so that they could continue on with their education. Because students, along with SGA and students focusing on asking us to make this their home, take care of the most vulnerable, they also wanted to make sure that every student could continue on in their academic program, that this would not keep a student from progressing towards graduation if they were graduating this year or completing this semester. So one of the things that was implemented on the academic side was also a pass-fail, which students could choose for every course. They could choose if they wanted to take that class pass-fail. So they would remove some of the anxiety, you know, if they were all of a sudden now getting a D and had really an exceptional GPA, but because now they were caring for children at home or their parents or, you know, their finances or transitioning, that they would still be able to get the credit for that course and continue on. And so that has been exceptionally well received by our students to be able to provide for that. No student was told that they could not have a place to live. We made sure that every student had a place to live. And even if they were somewhere else and they needed a place to live on campus and hadn't been living on campus, we would figure that out for them. So we did encourage students living in traditional halls, and many of us, right, we lived in those traditional halls, Miller, Threkel, Unitas. And you can't really social distance if you're living, you know, with somebody else in that same room and using the shared bathroom. So we encourage those students, if they were able to go home and to return and spend time with their families. But we gave an option for any of those students to stay if they needed to. And many of those students took us up on that and stayed, and we then socially distanced them. So we moved them into singles, moved them into places where they might be able to have a private bath. And then we left all the apartments open. Apartments are open all across the country, so that still stayed in place. And then we moved, like everybody else in Kentucky, we're to carry out. So you can still go and you can receive food service on campus, but you can't eat in the dining facilities. Tim, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Our Cardinal Cupboard remained open. That is our food pantry for students that are in most need and have food insecurity. We've partnered with Dare to Care. That is in the Student Activity Center, so that has remained open. And again, food insecurity is one of the things we're seeing on the emergency fund requests that come in. A lot of them are people saying, I need money to purchase food. So they can come here, and we have healthy options to be able to provide food for them. We partnered with other locations and Dare to Care in other parts of our community. And we're also using the emergency fund to help students that need additional funding to make sure that they're able to have the food that they need. So international travel and study abroad. We had over 80 students that were traveling internationally on study abroad programs. And there for a couple of weeks, this was really a grueling time period. Late evenings, middle of the night phone calls with parents, weekends, trying to do everything we could to get students back home and safely back home. So sometimes that meant waiting for them to be able to come at a time when there weren't as many people traveling, because there was a lot of anxiety about traveling on airplanes and those times. And sometimes I'm exceptionally thankful for all of our Senate and congressional representatives, because Senator McConnell's office, Senator Paul, Congressman Yarmouth, they were all helping us with communication with the State Department. We had some countries where we were having problems getting our students out of those countries. And we had some really anxious parents. Many of you are parents. Some of you may be parents of students that are currently here. And it was a lot of anxiety about borders closing and students not to be able to get out of a certain location. So we're fortunate every student who needed to come back, wanted to come back, came back. We had a few that actually stayed because them and their parents felt like they were in a better place, but it's helpful. I know that for a lot of our hundreds of our students, U of L is their home, and they're also our international students. So you can see on here, we have students that come from all over the globe. And we had some students who return. Some countries ask their students to return. And but the majority, the vast majority of our international students are still here. And they are some of our students that are really in need. They don't have that same home and family network connected in here. And we've seen a lot of requests from our graduate student population, particularly from our international student population. So it is assisting them. We also had students who had to travel, be it internationally all of a sudden, or who were coming back to the United States, or even within the United States, who didn't have budgeted money and didn't have resources to be able to get where they needed it. So that's another way. Many of you on this call have already donated the emergency fund. It's another way that those funds are being utilized for students as they have those needs. So, you know, student care and well-being is the top priority. And I am so thankful to work with and for a president who, she walks the walk out in public, and she does it even better, I think, you know, for us who work with her behind the scenes. She is dedicated and committed deeply and personally and genuinely to our students' well-being. So, you know, we've maintained all of our counseling center operations. That's been a priority. We've had counselors here on campus. We have a lot of staff and people that are still working on campus. Matt, I know you asked me about what's the feel on campus.
Yeah. It
feels really weird. I mean, you know, U of L is such a vibrant, and it's got so much energy and excitement of so many people being here. And it's, you know, you have a lot fewer people, but we still have students. We have a little under 3,000 between the apartments and the singles. We have a lot of people that are still here. We see weekly, we see at least 2,600 to 2,800 people coming in the Student Activity Center for food or to use this. I've talked to students when I see them in the building when I can. Some of them are just coming here for a location to get out of their apartment or to be able to have good Wi-Fi, but we still see people that are on campus. So as of just yesterday, we had, and I'm gonna make sure I get the right number, we had 339 student emergency fund requests. So just to give you an idea of the number of requests that we're receiving. And in the beginning, we've had to do this because we're thankful that alumni Louis and Louise Bornwasser created an emergency fund many years ago with resources that they provided. And we would help students that, you know, the apartment fire, or all of a sudden they went homeless for one reason or another, a crisis where they needed medication and couldn't afford that, or needed to get home for a parent who passed away and they lived across the country. Many great reasons that we've been able to help students, but now so many students are in emergency, and we had to ration kind of how much we could give to students. They might have, you know, a greater need than we could give, but we didn't have the resources to be able to give. And so I'm thankful to be able to share that as of yesterday, we had received over $300,000 in gifts to the Student Emergency Fund. Many of you on this call, and I have to say that that includes many of our faculty, staff, and our Board of Trustees. Our members of our Board of Trustees have stepped up in a big way. They are responsible for the overall governance of this university, but they also are personally giving. And I know our board chair, Mary Nixon, she's talked about, you know, giving at this time and giving until it even hurts, you know, so that we can help these most needy and get through this. And I'm just exceptionally thankful as an alum to be able to be a part of a university that really cares and is doing this even when so many other people are, you know, challenged with their own job situations, or all of our 401ks, you know, or, you know, we've all had, you know, monies that are now not in our accounts and those situations. So those funds, you know, have been coming in and been helping us meet these needs as we've been going along. And it's interesting because about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were about out. I mean, we had about $3,000 left, and these requests are coming in every day. And then, you know, a day later, we got a really large gift from a specific donor, and that, well, okay, great, we can continue to go forward and continue to message this to students and not have to pull it back. And then again, last week, we had another donor who came forward and was very generous. What I like to do, Matt, just real quick, I pulled up, if we have time for this, I was going to read a couple of quick summaries of a couple of students and what they wrote in. If that's
sure, I think that'd be great.
So I'm going to read 3 separates, and of course we've had hundreds of these, but I just pulled up 3 to be able to share. All right, let me pull this over. So here's one. Due to the current situation involving the coronavirus, my spouse is unable to get reemployed. I do not make enough currently to pay our bills, utilities, and food. I have worked out an agreement with my landlord to have the rent split and payments for the time being, but still have to pay bills and get food. The funds would be used to help for these remaining bills, and I do not have the ability to be able to pay at the moment. So really to keep them, although nobody's getting kicked out right now, but to keep them being able to pay for those basic needs that they have for their family. And that's something we see over and over again in their requests. I shared that one because it's kind of generic in some ways, but we see that over and over again, students who don't have the money to pay for their basic needs. So here's another one. I came in contact with someone with the coronavirus and had to self-quarantine. We've had people who've had to do that because they've been in contact, self-isolate for a period of time. And because of that, I lost my 2 jobs. We've got a lot of students that are going to school, working multiple jobs, trying to be able to fund everything that they need. Weeks later, because of the economy and the coronavirus, they lost their jobs. So not just not able to work, but they lost the job. I don't know how I'll be able to afford to live. I can't go back to work, and they're going to use these funds to pay their rent and to be able to buy groceries. And let me read this final one, example at least. My experience with COVID-19 started in mid-February when my uncle returned from traveling and having been infected with the coronavirus. This student had to take time off work to go pick up his niece. He works 3 jobs and was able to pay for school the next semester with those funds, but he lost all of his jobs because of the virus. I had to find somewhere for my niece to stay because I could no longer have the means to take care of her. I was unable to pay my bills, leaving me with no other choice but eviction. I know we're working with that student. Again, every student that needs a place to stay, we're getting them a place to stay. My friend is allowing me to be able to stay with them, but we've continued to work with that student, and I don't have family to reach out to. I've exhausted all my options in my reach. And I just have to say that we have students, and we've seen this with students who've applied, we have students who age out of the foster care systems who don't have the same family support structure. And we did some analytics and looked at the students who are applying for the emergency fund. More than 70% of those students are students that are Pell eligible. So we know, going back to those most needy, that these are our students that are most needy, that are asking and requesting these funds. We've also seen higher rates of first-generation students from a percentage standpoint that are making requests for these funds, and our underrepresented minority groups. And then I mentioned the international students as well in our graduate population. So we also share community resources. There's a lot of community resources. So whether that's utility forgiveness or delaying those payments, we're helping to be able to help students with accessing those community resources. We've continued the counseling services and health services. We've switched to telehealth. So for our students, and that's been a rapid change to be able to have to do that, but students can still call in every day to be able to get counseling services. We're helping students for them to be able to know how to maintain their mental health. Dr. Aisha Ukta, who's our counseling center director, she is sharing information about how for them to stay healthy in this new environment. The Career Center, we have a platform where people are posting jobs, and that has drastically reduced. And we know students, our graduates, great, excellent students that are graduating who've already lost their jobs. Students who had jobs offered to them, who they've had those jobs pulled back. We know many of us working in our own environments that sometimes it's those, and even here at UofL, we had to freeze new hires except for essential ones because we have to be responsible for the financial crisis. But our students are going to really struggle. Our students that are graduating and our current students finding those jobs, finding the internships. So we've been putting information online, virtual workshops about how they can navigate that world. The internships, our internship coordinators, different faculty, different departments met, and they pulled together a list of internships. And maybe this may be something, Matt, we could share with this group, some of the internship needs we have. If you all have companies or businesses, I've got a list of some internship needs. You might be able to work with our Career Center to be able to help students I don't know, can you all hear the plane? You all can tell them on campus. You know, those of us that have been here a long time, we get the planes and the trains and everything. We're used to
Well,
that.
Dean Mardis, let me also add, while you're talking about career services, that we will have Bill Fletcher, the Director of Campus Career Services, joining us for one of these virtual engagement chats in May.
There we go. That's
So
good.
please continue to monitor our social and check the homepage, and we have an entire hour devoted to that topic.
Our students need it. I mean, this is going to be a really hard job market, and we've seen that with other recessions, that it becomes harder for those graduates. So, and if it's a full-time internship, paid internships are great, but even if it's unpaid, some of these students need these for their academic courses. So fitness is a big component. Obviously, we have a wonderful rec center on campus. Our rec sports department's done a great job of shifting to the virtual world. They can have virtual fitness assessments that somebody can help them with the workout plan, virtual gaming. We're doing fitness classes through Instagram for our students, trick shots, fitness competitions. Again, trying to create community and bringing our students together, even in the virtual world. All of our student services are still open. The university is open. We're just in this remote environment. Somebody could walk on the campus right now. Obviously, we're not encouraging it. We're not having events. It isn't a destination place like it usually is for those reasons, and we're not having classes. But all the student services can be met, and we've quickly removed to this remote work environment. Our Parents Association is continuing to communicate with parents and is passing along a lot of the information that is coming out from the university. And there's a lot of communication that is coming out. One of the hardest decisions we've had to make, and it's really heart-wrenching. I love commencement. You know, I love so many of our traditions on campus. But, you know, the joy of our students being able to celebrate their accomplishments at commencement, and having to postpone that is really just a heart-wrenching decision. So we have postponed that until December. We've sent out a survey to students. Over 47% of them responded, which is a really, really exceptional response rate. We hardly ever get that kind of response rate on surveys. And we're working right now with student government leaders to be able to determine how we can both recognize students now, but also celebrate them in the months to come. So there's a lot of communication. Dr. Bendaputi, Provost Bain have continued to provide regular updates and have talked with a lot of different departments. So that's important, the communication. Sometimes it's a little bit much, I think, for students getting so many emails. Our students don't work with email in the same way. A lot of times they rather text or use, you know, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, but they're having to read through a lot more emails. And we're trying to do some videos too when we can to kind of mix that up. So I showed them the mural before on our home. On the other side of the lounge in the student center is the Raise Your L's, and we're still, I know you all did this on one of the other alumni videos that you had, Matt. You know, everybody was raising their L's in their Brady Bunch squares that we're all in or whatever. But, you know, we're still telling students we're raising our L's and still keeping this Cardinal community together. And I'd say the university is strong. Yes, we're having financial difficulties like everyone is. And yes, the funds that our alumni and others are giving are incredibly helpful to be able to go back directly to our students. But the decisions we're making and what we're doing and how quickly we've been able to move to the remote and online environment is going to keep this university thriving. And we've been looked at as an example nationally and within the state of how we are managing this situation. So that's been a lot of intentional work and a lot of the leadership team at the table prioritizing how we can do that.
Dean Mardis, you referenced the unprecedented uncertainty across campus, the 339 respondents to need emergency help from that student relief fund. You talked a little bit about the impact that the international students have felt. Are there any positives that have come out of this crisis? Are there any? You talked about the student services still being open and people still raising their L's from afar, but can you talk about any maybe the unexpected positives that have come as a result of this?
Yes, and so I can go to a tactical place with that, but I want to go to an emotional place first. Our country, unfortunately, had become, I think, more antagonistic, and people are out kind of to get each other and less trusting, kind of a gotcha culture. And I have seen more grace extended by people and our students and our faculty and our leadership. And I am thankful for that. I think we need that. I think that's part of the healing. There is a loss. We were talking earlier on the commencement team about how we can recognize this class of 2020. And in some ways, it feels a little bit like a memorial, not like in World War II where we lost lives, but there is this sense of loss particularly for our graduating students, for many of the traditions and things, and for all of our students. So, and during those times, sometimes it can change people a little bit. And I have seen a change with I feel like more grace and more understanding that people are providing to each other. There's other positives. I think how we've transitioned to online. We had faculty and areas before that were really resistant for legitimate reasons. But now that they're seeing this, I think we will be able to look at this in the future and say, how can we both utilize online and in person so that we can provide the right mix? So I think there'll be some opportunities for us maybe to serve some populations of students. I think about our non-traditional students, I think, who we want coming back to college. And oftentimes in a recession, you see more people wanting to come into higher education because they've lost their job. Like, hey, this is a great time to retool or to go into that profession that I always wanted to, and it is. So we'll want to see those opportunities, but given everything that's going on, being able to do that in the online environment will be really important. So I think transitioning to that so quickly. I think our admissions office, as we're recruiting for this next year, is utilizing how we manage this as an example of how we care for our students, that we did not just kick our students out, that we caring for our students. For our students in those traditional residence halls and suites who we had encouraged to leave for social distancing reasons, we're refunding those students the prorated amount of their money on housing. We're refunding those students the prorated amount on their meal plans. That is financially challenging for the university. But we felt like it was the right thing to do because we know those students need that money in their pocket now. Their families need those monies in their pocket now. Some universities were just giving credits. And we discussed that, but in talking through it with our leadership and everyone, we decided if we're trying to be able to get that money back into the hands of students. And that's what we'll do with the CARES Act funding as it comes in, try and get those into the hands of students, because our goal is still for every student to be able to progress, graduate, and retain.
Dean Mardis, you've given us updates. We know that the rest of the spring semester will be happening online, as well as the summer classes. Now it's time for the $1 million question, and the question we received the most. What do you foresee happening in the fall, and what is your prediction of where we're headed for this fall, and will there be classes on campus?
I like the predictions when I'm being asked, what's the football team record for next year? Hey, which bowl game do you think we're going to? Remember, that's when we started in the fall moving. That was the question when I was meeting, with some of the sports talk radio about moving. They're like, okay, what's your prediction for the football season? That's up in the air too. We all know that. We've heard from Vince about the challenges and the decision the NCAA and ACC are going to make. Just yesterday, late afternoon into the evening, we had a group at the university who were discussing fall. And we are preparing for different scenarios, but our primary focus and our intention right now is to open in the fall. And we will have to have social distancing in place, and we've still got to work through a lot of logistics. We are exceptionally fortunate with the research capabilities and our outstanding faculty and our UofL Health. So we have an ability to test and respond and help our students and our community navigate through this in ways that other universities likely would not. So we are preparing for how we could manage a on-campus fall semester, and that is our desire and our intent. Obviously, we have to be responsive to what the virus is doing and how it's impacting people and what our state, federal, and local officials are advising us. So there's been continual communication, and we're working to see how we can help them and how they can help us. But we are planning towards, an opening here on campus in the fall, although it may look a little different.
Sure. Probably have a large virtual component. A question we just received from Kyle, who's joining us in the chat, is whether students in fully online programs are eligible for the Student Emergency Fund.
Yes. Any student, graduate student, professional students, undergraduate students. Obviously, we're getting more undergraduate requests. We have more undergraduate students, but yes.
For those 339 recipients you mentioned, what's the biggest need right now?
So I'll pull up. I've got the spreadsheet. I've got it pulled up, and I'll just start scrolling through rent, utilities, food, water, electric. That one student who needed a plane ticket to be able to get back home from their international experience. School supplies, toiletries, right? If you can get there and find it to buy some toilet paper, but just basic hygiene needs. But it's a lot of these same things. They don't have the basic, just rent, utilities, basic life experience, going to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If our students can't have a comfortable place to live and can't have those components, then it's going to be really hard for them to be able to be successful. We do see requests in here for summer books are starting to come in. So as we're getting more requests, summer supplies, people thinking towards this upcoming summer, we're seeing good enrollments. We're trending for the summer because we're going to be all online. Some of the students wouldn't have the funding that they needed. We've had requests for some laptops, Wi-Fi hotspots, food, a lot of tuition, rent money. On the tuition piece, I'd have to say too, this is another student-friendly component. Registration, usually we restrict students who haven't paid their bill. And you got, there's some financial realities at some point in time, and we work through our financial aid and other donor funds to try and help every student that we can. But for this upcoming summer and the fall, we took off all those holds. So if a student had a hold for financial reasons, if a student had a hold because they hadn't met with their advisor, we have some Title IX training around sexual assault and awareness that requires students to do to make sure we have a good, healthy campus and help educate our students. We took all those holds off to make sure that students could at least register now. And we'll work with them on those, following through with those obligations later. But we just know there's so many things going, our students are having to deal with now.
Dean Mardis, you have, as I mentioned at the top, over 24 years of higher education experience.
You keep saying that, Matt.
just in broad terms.
The old dean.
Whether it's at UofL or just in general, how do you see COVID-19 affecting higher education just moving forward? And what kind of changes will we be seeing?
Well, you're going to see a lot more online and remote workforces. As we see things that work, I think you're going to see some offices and services that may be delivered more. I think about telehealth in the mental health environment. We've been inching towards that, and for good clinical reasons, there's been some safeguards around that professionally. But I think we could see some of that stuff because we've been kind of forced into it so rapidly. I think you could see mental health going more online. And I think you could even see groups that might be in online. We really focus on groups. So I think you'll see more hybrid offerings that will be offered in terms of the classes. I think you're going to see a lot of people, and I've heard this from students and others, who are longing to be back and maybe valuing how much more this community is and how enjoyable staff, faculty, students, longing for those experiences and that connections. As humans, we need those connections, which is why belonging is such a part of our ethos. When students come in, how can we find a place for every student to feel like they belong? And we're trying to create that in the virtual world, but it's not the same. So I've had the fortune to go to many retirement parties here at UofL and then talk to people who've retired from UofL later. I know some retirees are actually on this call. Many times when I ask them, hey, how's retirement? They go, it's great. It's great. I love not having the stress. My blood pressure's down. That's great. But I miss the people. I miss the people. The people they worked with, the people they interact with, the rhythms of campus and being on campus, they miss that. And I think some people will see how much more that they miss that and will be thankful when we are able to get back together and be on campus again.
Definitely. And I know the alumni office feels that way because, it's always a lull during the summers when campuses aren't as busy and you don't have all the buzz of the students and all the activities. So we're definitely in that boat. You talked about lowering blood pressure. We see that you're in the office now working. What are some of the things that you've been doing over the last couple of weeks to relax? Do you have any book or Netflix recommendations for us, or kind of what are you and your family doing to de-stress?
Well, I've learned anytime I'm on the cell phone, I stand up because I'm sitting on these Teams meetings all the time. So if somebody calls me on my cell phone, I say to myself, okay, stand up, walk around. Myself and one other person out of our whole office, there's two of us that have been here most days. So I'll walk up and down the hallway, do lunges. I've got an exercise ball. Sometimes I'm on the phone on the exercise ball, stretching out my back and leaning back and doing those things. It's been hard. We're working more hours than we worked in student affairs in many parts of our campus. People already work a lot of hours. And so the additional hours and the intensity of trying to value everyone and work through all these different programs and be intentional about it, it's really hard. For me, my faith helps me get through. My fitness, I try to prioritize running or doing something. And then my family, trying to reconnect with them, when I get home in the evening, and trying to be there and be present for them. So those are things. We have a lot of different resources that we've been sharing out with staff. That well-being model looks different for everybody. And so, everybody's got to figure that out for themselves. We've been having some remote social hours, on campus. We've encouraged our student organizations to have those remote opportunities to gather, to still come together, to have those virtual meetings and times. We know it's not the same, but we've got to try and do those things. The fitness components, the mental health components, that's why we went online so quickly with the fitness pieces, because our rec center is usually just packed and our students use that. So we knew they weren't going to be able to do that. And even for students who maybe never wanted to do that, this may give them some time to be able to do that. So.
Well, yeah, we have definitely been focusing on the physical side of things as well. Louisville alumni launched a Workout Wednesday session where we help people stay physical from home. And then, of course, the mental health aspect. We've included a lot of those resources on our homepage as well. So I encourage everybody to check those out. Dean Mardis, we want to be mindful of your time. We want to thank you for joining us today and giving us these important updates, not only about the Student Emergency Fund, but also just the wide-ranging campus updates that you've provided. Before we let you go, is there anything else we need to know or that you'd like to share with us?
Well, first and foremost would be my gratitude, because I can see on the boxes, many of you that are here, the Bornwassers are online, which is the family who had the vision to initially start our emergency fund, and want to thank them for their continued dedication to the university and the many others. I wouldn't want to go through and start listing everybody, because I know I would miss someone, but so I'm exceptionally thankful for that. The retention of our students is still a primary focus. And, you asked me, Matt, about long-term implications. I think some universities and colleges are going to really struggle recovering from this. Financially, I think universities that don't have the size and the scope and the depth that UofL does are going to struggle more. So we may see some universities close, and or may not be able to recover in the same way. So I would say for all of you, you have your networks as you're able to tell and share with other alums, members of this community, prospective students, parents. UofL is open. We are here. We are going to thrive even during these challenges. Are going to be ready to continue to launch as we go forward. So share that message. If you know people that their son or daughter is considering higher education, now's the time. UofL's the place. Encourage them to come and be here. If you can help our graduates with jobs or internships, please continue to engage in that work. If you can share of your resources for our students and our populations that are most needy, contributing to the emergency fund, I can tell you firsthand that is impacting our students, and they can feel the love and the support of our Cardinal family. So continue to do those things. Woodford Porter, the big quote always was, former chair of our board of trustees, education is the great equalizer. And we know that's true. I mean, for many of us, for our UofL experience, and we need to provide that. We need to provide that for our first generation students, for our low income students, for non-traditional students who are looking to make a better way and a better life for their family during this time. So one-on-one sometimes is how those conversations can occur, and you all have your network. So please continue to share that message. UofL, yes, challenging times exceptionally, but we're going to thrive. We're going to get through this, and we're taking care of our students, our faculty, and staff along the way.
Well, Dean Mardis, again, thank you so much for joining us. Mary Ann, did you have a question, and did you want to try to snap a photo of the group?
I would love to snap a photo of the group. We had one question come in here at the end, and I actually think Dean Mardis kind of addressed it generally. And what is the biggest thing that our alumni can do to help right now? And you did kind of address it just now. Is there a specific way that people can give directly in a food drive kind of way, or is there a way to give directly to the Cardinal Cupboard?
We do food drives during the year on campus. Right now, with the supply we're getting from the Dare to Care partnership and from Kroger. Kroger has been a good partner, and we were getting ready to launch something about how Kroger has partnered with UofL and the Cardinal Cupboard, but with all this, we haven't been able to do that. So between those two connections, we're being able to get the healthy food and a diversity of food options. So we don't need a food drive right now, but some of our students aren't able to come here. And so using the emergency fund, we can, get money to them, and then they can go and purchase that food wherever they are. Because some of our students aren't here in Louisville. I mean, many of them are out in their rural communities, and you know, for many of our low-income Pell eligible students, they're not just here in Louisville. You know, they're in our rural areas in Kentucky and in other communities. So it's important that we can help them, because we want every student to be able to retain and to graduate and eventually to be able to walk across that stage, Todd Schmealer, and get their diploma without having to pay a diploma fee. That was your big SGA issue when you were here 30 plus years ago. They're going to get their diploma without paying that fee. And Todd, thanks for your support, former alumni board president. And we want that for everybody, right? We want them to have that experience, and you all are all an integral part of that. I'm exceptionally thankful to be a part of it.
Thank you so much for that. The other thing I want to mention, and this was to your good advice before this call, is that you can help financially, you can help, you know, with the food drive, but the encouragement piece is huge. And encouraging this class and celebrating this class of 2020 is a big part of what we're focusing on right now. And the alumni office will be launching Alumni Week next week. So we encourage you to follow us on social media and take part in that. There'll be daily postings trying to engage this class with recognizing their mentors and their favorite memories. And then the following week we'll be launching our 20 for 20, which is 20 words of encouragement or a video, you know, congratulating and encouraging this class of 2020. So please take part in those. I'll include the link for the 2020 in our follow-up email as well. And Todd, I'm seeing your question here about the alumni background. We'll put that in there too. That has been very popular.